Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to dive into the fascinating microscopic and macroscopic mechanics of why we do what we do when it comes to our health. Think about every single choice you made today. What you ate, whether you took the stairs or the elevator, how much sleep you managed to get. We kind of tend to think of these as just trivial daily routines, right? But they're actually part of a massive, complex behavioral system that literally dictates the quality and length of our lives. So today, we're unpacking the science behind those choices.
Okay, let's hit the ground running with a staggering statistic from the World Health Organization. 40% of all deaths worldwide are due to just 10 behavioral risk factors. Just let that sink in for a second. Almost half of global mortality isn't primarily driven by some mysterious, unavoidable superbug. It's driven by our behavior. This means the absolute greatest untapped medical breakthrough isn't necessarily a new pill. It's understanding and modifying human action.
So to understand how we can actually increase our healthy life expectancy, here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. From bacteria to behavior. 2. Deconstructing human behavior. 3. Immunogens versus pathogens. 4. 7 actions for health. 5. The drivers of behavior. And finally, 6. Knowledge, attitude, and practice.
All right, jumping right into Section 1, from bacteria to behavior. We're going to begin our journey by looking at a massive, historic shift in human survival. For most of human history, our biggest enemies were microscopic invaders. But today, well, the battlefield has fundamentally changed. We are living through a profound risk transition. If you map this out, traditional risks, stuff like undernutrition and unsafe water, are steadily falling over time thanks to science and global development. But modern behavioral risks are a whole different story. As societies industrialize and modernize, behaviors like tobacco use, physical inactivity, and poor diet are absolutely skyrocketing. The burden of disease has quite literally shifted from bacteria to behavior.
When you break down the global data, there's a really stark contrast in how this plays out today. The poorest countries are still largely battling traditional environmental risks. We're talking underweight, unsafe water, zinc and iron deficiencies. But developed countries are fighting a totally different war. Their top threats are strictly behavioral outcomes: tobacco use, high blood pressure, alcohol consumption, high BMI, and physical inactivity. We are quite literally behaving our way into illness in the developed world.
Moving on to Section 2, deconstructing human behavior. If our own actions are the modern problem, we really need to define exactly what we're talking about here. We use the word behavior all the time, but scientifically, what is it?
In health education, we aren't talking about random twitches or an involuntary reflex like a sneeze. We're talking about voluntary, purposeful acts. It's the literal way we choose to act, arising out of decisions taken by the motor center of the brain. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, a behavior is an action that has a specific frequency, a specific duration, and a specific purpose.
What's super interesting is that every single action you take gets broken down into 3 distinct domains. First up, the cognitive domain. That's your brain's data processing center, handling knowledge and awareness. Then there's the affective domain, the heart of the matter, where cognition actually meets feeling to create arousal, which shapes your attitudes and beliefs. And finally, the psychomotor domain, the actual physical voluntary muscle action. Basically, it's a combination of what you know, how you feel about it, and how you physically move to do it.
Which brings us to Section 3, immunogens versus pathogens. Knowing how behaviors are formed, we can categorize them into 2 completely opposing forces in our daily lives.
I absolutely love this terminology. Think of behavioral immunogens as your daily armor. Just like your immune system fights off disease, these are behaviors that actively promote health and prevent illness. Things like physical exercise, breastfeeding, eating well, going in for health screenings. On the flip side, we have behavioral pathogens. Just like a viral pathogen harms your body, these are the toxic habits, smoking, excessive alcohol consumption, unsafe sex, that actively harm your health and act as the leading risk factors for preventable death worldwide.
All right, Section 4, 7 actions for health. Let's see how our choices build into a broader spectrum of health management. Because it turns out, our health-related actions fall into 7 highly organized categories.
Basically, every interaction we have with our well-being falls into one of these 7 buckets. You start with promotive behaviors, like exercising and good nutrition, which just keep us at a healthy baseline. Then preventative behaviors, aimed at stopping specific diseases. Utilization behaviors involve actually going out and using health services, like getting a vaccine. Then there are illness behaviors, what you actually do when you feel sick. Compliance is a big one. Do you actually take the medicine your doctor gave you? After that comes rehabilitation, the work we put in to recover after a major health event. And finally, community action,
where entire neighborhoods advocate for their collective environmental and social health.
Let's zoom in on that fourth category for a second, illness behaviors. Think about what you do when you wake up feeling terrible. It's not just one random action, it's a highly predictable chronological journey. First, you become aware of the symptom. Then, you complain about it to your family. Maybe do some terrifying late-night internet searching. Next, you might try a home remedy or an over-the-counter medication. If that fails, you make the crucial decision to seek professional treatment, leading to a doctor consultation. The final hurdles are actually following the doctor's advice and eventually returning for a follow-up. Falling off at any single one of these steps entirely changes your health outcome.
So, Section 5, the drivers of behavior. This raises a massive question. Why do some of us complete that healthy journey while others just completely ignore their symptoms?
To answer that, health researcher Lawrence Green mapped out an incredible framework showing that our behaviors are driven by 3 distinct categories of determinants. First, you've got predisposing factors. These are the inside-the-head elements like your personal knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs that motivate you. But motivation isn't enough without enabling factors. These are the real-world environmental logistics, like is the healthy choice available, affordable, and accessible? Finally, reinforcing factors. These come from your society. Does your culture, your family, or your peer group encourage this behavior, or do they lovingly mock you for ordering a salad? Honestly, you usually need all 3 factors aligning to create any sort of lasting change.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 6, knowledge, attitude, and practice. Finally, let's zoom in specifically on those inside-the-head predisposing factors. Because before the environment or your peers can influence you, the seed of action has to start within your own mind. It all starts with knowledge. The source material defines this as a clear mental perception, an awareness of facts, and familiarity with information. It is the absolute bedrock of intentional behavior change. Put simply, without knowledge, individuals remain entirely unaware of health problems and are fundamentally unable to even begin managing their behavior. You can't fix a problem you don't know exists, right? But hey, we got to be really careful here. There's a big difference between general awareness and essential knowledge. It's not enough to just have a general awareness of a topic, knowing the what, why, and when. We see this all the time. People know smoking is bad, or that they should eat better. But intentional behavior change depends heavily on essential knowledge, which is the highly practical, actionable how-to. Knowing that a disease exists is awareness, knowing exactly how to protect yourself on a Tuesday afternoon, now that's essential knowledge. Once you've got that essential knowledge, the next domain kicks in, attitude. Social psychologists define attitude as an enduring evaluation, and this is vital. As humans, we are definitely not neutral observers of the world. As soon as we learn about something, we instantly evaluate it. We attach a feeling to it, creating a positive or negative stance that dictates whether we view that object or idea favorably or unfavorably.
And this whole thing sparks the ultimate behavioral chain reaction, usually called the KAP model. Proper knowledge, the K, combines with our underlying feelings to shape our attitude, the A. Once that attitude is solidified, it acts as the gateway that ultimately dictates our actual practice, the P, which is the physical behavior we choose to engage in. While human behavior is incredibly complex and doesn't always follow a perfect straight line, this K to A to P sequence really is the foundational map of why we do what we do.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question to consider about your own life and those invisible determinants guiding your daily actions. If your overall health is truly just the physical practice of your everyday accumulated behaviors, what deep-seated attitudes are secretly driving the choices you made this very morning? Think about your own behavioral immunogens and pathogens. The more you understand the source of your actions, the more power you have to change them. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the mechanics of human behavior, and keep questioning the choices you make.